Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, part 12 of the Persson tribute build of the Airfix 148 scale P51D Mustang, kit number A05131. Okay, where we left off is I got all of the primary painting done. Got the engine cover done, and now it is time to do a little bit of detail painting before we start the decals. Okay, what I've done is I've masked off the exhaust, and I am going to use acrylic metal color by Vallejo airbrush colors, burnt iron. That makes a good exhaust color. So I'll get out the old airbrush, get a glove. It's kind of funny and ironic in a way, I guess, that I love this metal color so much when generally Vallejo products kind of upset me and make me unhappy. But hey, it works and I like it. So let's get just a couple of drops of this. It's not going to take much at all to do this. And it's taped off good enough. So let's see. Alright, so let us begin. Ooh, I don't want to get paint on there. So there's that side. And I'm using this stand extensively right now because I don't want to break any more small parts off, because that is enough to make you want to weep. Alright, so there's that. And then the other thing I'm going to have to paint are the machine gun barrels. And I think once I paint, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of dry brushing and stuff like that and paint some details on these gear bay doors. But other than that, I shouldn't have a lot to paint because everything is pretty much done. So let me clean out my airbrush. Okay, for the machine gun barrels, I'm going to be using some black, and then I'll hit it with just a very little bit of dry brushing. And for that, I'm using Vallejo Model Air NATO Black. So as I've said, that's what I like using Model Air for, brush painting. And it works good. Could have used my model color, but I got to thin it and all that kind of stuff, and I really didn't feel like it. Sound like I'm getting lazy in this project? Well, I'm not. Now, that's one thing that it's not a deal breaker, but I really like separate machine guns and barrels and stuff like that. Usually when they're molded into the wing, number one, they're harder to paint. Number two, they sometimes don't look as good. Now, these aren't bad, and the nice thing is because this whole part here in the front is a separate piece, it is the barrels are they're not flat, they're actually got holes like barrels. So that's kind of cool. It's a nice thing. Okay, those look pretty good. All right, and that looks, check the sides, make sure, because with silver you can really tell if you miss something, like on these edges right here. I think it's time to retire these brushes to the weathering supplies, because this one's starting to get pretty fuzzy. So anyway, there's that. All right, next up is the decals. So I'm going to start with the sides. I usually like to start with sides because that's kind of the hardest part. And I'm going to set that over to there. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to tilt my I'm going to tilt this like that, so I'll have a little bit of an angle to put these decals on. I'm going to start with the starboard side, or right side, as sitting in the cockpit. Okay, that'll give me just a little bit of a tilt. I may have to flip it over for some of it, but there we go. That's a little bit of a tilt. I may have to do something more here, but anyway. So let's start here. So first decal we need is number 1, and that is not going to work like that. So I'm going to have to flip it over. Turn it around. Okay, you know what? This isn't cooperating. There. That'll work. Because I got to put this one right here. Number 1 goes underneath. Yeah, these are all the stencil decals. So let's see here. I could use the kit decals, but I think these might be, yeah, they aren't Swedish, so that wouldn't look very good. That wouldn't look right at all. So let's go with number 1. And right here. Okay, I'm gonna be off camera here while I'm cutting these, so forgive me. Now, I've never used this brand of decals before, so it should be interesting to see how they work. Each design can come out individually. Digital silk decals do not generally need to be clear coated prior to use. Use care when applying as the decal film is extremely thin. Next generation digital silk decals are tough, durable, and now exceptionally flexible. Do not float the decal off the backing paper as it will soak off the glue and become unusable. Rather, soak the decal in warm water for about 20 seconds, remove it and allow it to sit for 30 seconds before trying to slide it off. So let's see how that works. So let that sit for a minute. No decal solvent will be needed. If you feel the need, we recommend Microsoft Microscale Set and Sol. But note the decal solvents only affect the clear film and have little effect on the inks. Brush the microset directly onto your model before sliding the decal in position. After you slide the decal, so that's cool. So apparently yeah. So it really recommends doing a clear coat as well when after you get the decals in place. And apparently the solvent will I just noticed something. Oh my lord. Oh shnikes. Yeah, these are surely different. Hopefully I don't lose this one. Yeah, these are different. This whole thing, it is covered completely in I may lose this one. It is covered completely in carrier film, this whole thing, so you have to cut really close. So I'm going to attempt to fix that right here. Yeah, see, decal film. So it is important, A, to read the instructions, and B, pay attention to what it's telling you to do. So let's get some of my setting solution here and my little tiny decal brush. Oh man, sorry about the camera. I gotta get a better camera mount. Okay, so this one goes right here. And the arrow faces down, so I need to turn it a little bit like this. Oh, you can't really, almost can't see this decal. Well, I gotta say, that looks pretty stinking good. So then it says to apply some more. This is, I may not need my microsol on these. Be interesting to see how these work. Sure hope I don't tweak this thing. Alright, so I got a couple of decals on the lower part of the fuselage, but I decided to throw the brakes on that, and here's why. Some of my more intrepid viewers may have noticed something about my my paint scheme here. I totally forgot about this upper wing paint right there. So I'm gonna have to tape that off, and I'm gonna have to paint that black. Then I'm also going to have to paint that red right there because there's no decals for that. So I'm gonna start working on that. You've seen me mask other stuff, so I'm not going to bore you with that. I will tape it off, and I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to tape that off there. I'm going to monkey around with it, and I'll come back and discuss it further. Okay, I've got my paint mixed up. Equal parts Equal parts black, XF1 Tamiya black, Tamiya XF1 flat black, X22 clear, and X20 thinner. I've also got everything all masked off here. So now, carefully paint get this all painted up. And when I tape this off for the black, I also incorporated the masking for the red warning portions on the flats. And I'll show you those. Once this dries. All right, so that is done. So we'll let it dry. And I'll clean up my airbrush and we'll come back. All right, so now it's time to remove the tape for the red portion. So let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. All right, so that looks pretty good. So with that removed, I'll mix up some red using my usual potion. All right, got my red. So let's see if we can do this and make it look halfway decent. All right, well, there's that. That took a long time, didn't it? So I'm going to clean up my airbrush. All right, so here's what we have. The black and the red is done. So I think with that, that really is, I think, it for the painting. So back on the decals, and as I mentioned earlier, this whole thing is carrier film. So the trick is to cut the decal really close to the print. Then what I always like to leave a little tab for my tweezers to hold on to. Well, since this is all carrier film, I do this. I take my knife and just next to the decal, I just slightly score the carrier film. Then I can cut the decal off, clamp it in me tweezers like that, and it's ready to go. So that's the trick, is cutting through that carrier film so the decal releases properly. Now this is a first time for me using these kind of decals. I think I mentioned that, but they seem pretty cool. And I think once I get I think once I get a clear coat on it, which it says you need, they should probably blend in pretty good to the finish, but we'll see about that. So anyway, I'm going to work on this decal here. I'm going to go ahead and finish up all of the stencils all along this bottom edge. Then that way I can flip the aircraft upright and do the decals that go on the side. Then I'll move on to the top of the wings and the bottom of the wings. All right, I've got these small stencils down low, and from what I can see, that the carrier film really does disappear really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead on this side of the aircraft, start here, work my way that way, and start putting on the rest of the decals. I'll do the stencils first, get those done, and then I'll work on the big markings. So I'm not going to bore you with sitting through it all again. Maybe I'll come back. Well, I know I'll come back whenever it's time to do the big markings, because I want to see how they work with the panel lines and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I've got all the stencils done. Now I'm going to start up with the larger decals. So the first I'm going to do is this large K that goes on the rudder. Now it will be interesting to see how it works with the joint between the rudder and the vertical stabilizer. So we'll see how that works. But I did the same thing. I cut it as close as I could without marring the colored portion. And then using, I've started using this. I've had it forever. I got it from a friend of mine, Keith Short. And I keep forgetting I have it because I've got it hung up. And this is perfect for doing decals. And you can do a real light swipe with a straight edge right along there to make a separation point between the carrier film and the decal. So anyway, thanks Keith. This is really coming in handy. Good stuff. So let's see here. I'm going to soak this first in the water and then install it. Okay, and there it is. Looks pretty good, but we'll see what happens once it starts to settle in a little bit. See how well it settles into this joint here, because I'm probably going to have to cut it, I'm thinking. So I'm going to let that dry really good before I start messing around with it. And then I think on one side I'm going to actually experiment and try Solvaset and see what happens. It says, you know, I'm not sure if it'll work on this type of deal, but we're going to see. So I'm going to carry on with some more of these decals. Okay, as you can see, I've got the decals done on this side. So I'm going to let this sit for a little while and see how they settle in. And then depending on what they do after they've dried completely, I may try some Solvaset on here and see what happens. And hopefully it won't do anything crazy and ruin the decals. Okay, here it is, ready to go for clear. So I've got the landing gear struts installed, these these gear bay doors and the actuators, those are installed. I put the canopy back on for the clear coat and put the tail wheel on. So other than that, we're ready. And once I do that, construction is going to be pretty stinking close to done. Now, nice thing is with putting the landing gear on like that is I can set it down for it to dry without having any problems. And I'm going to be using a clear plastic tub to let it dry, so hopefully not too much dust will get on it. The main reason I'm using a clear is because the decal manufacturer suggested it, because to seal them in, I guess, and also the sheen of the decal is quite a bit different, and they're a little bit thicker, so hopefully it will kind of blend them in with the fuselage. So I'm going to mix up some clear, get ready to go. All right, here we go. Using the Persson AH, since it's just a single coverage deal. And the nice thing is, as I'm with the Persson AH, I can use this big bottle, which means less chance of me running out using the smaller cup, because I don't want to be monkeying around with trying to spray a nice wet coat on. I'm using 50% thinner, 50% clear, and I have tested it on some scrap, so it will not mess with the finish. Wearing the old handy dandy glove, trying to get my hand all goopy and nasty. Okay, so the underside is done, so I'm going to let that cure for a second, and then I'm going to do the prop and spinner, so it'll all be uniform, and this ultra flat Tamiya paint won't be too glaring. It'll help with weathering what little I'm going to do. So let's see. So the next thing I need to do, let's see, how do I want to approach this? I'll do the wings. I'll do the upper surfaces first. Like that. I'm going to go that part there. That part there. Sides down low, and that way I can do the sides hopefully easily. Alright, now to make it a little easier, I'm going to get out the old turntable. And that should be good. So set that aside, let it dry a bit. clean up the airbrush, and we'll come back once it's dried. All right, the clear coat is done, so now I can finish with the landing gear, so I can put the wheels where they belong. I like the fact that they can only go on one way, and that puts the flat spot of the weighted tire at the bottom, so that's really cool. But since it's all covered in paint, I'm gonna have to use the old super glue. I like using the gel for stuff like this. I could scrape the landing gear clean, but I'm not too overly concerned with it. Make sure it's lined up right. Test fit this one. Yeah, that's good. So as you can see, I'm getting really close to being done with this here kit. As a matter of fact, the only thing I have left to do, as far as I got to do some weathering, very light weathering, and the aerial, and I'll be done. I'll be really stoked. So let's do put these gear doors in place. But that I'm going to have to be a little bit more precise. So I'll use a toothpick. Let's see, I'll put it there. Put it on the door itself. And then I'll put a couple of drops here and here for the other contact point. Sorry about being so shaky, folks, but you know, I had a cup of coffee a little while ago. Which probably wasn't the best idea, but I did. Test fit this one. That is good. So put the super glue on there. Whoa. And then there and there. And there we go. All right, folks. So that right there concludes, with the exception of putting the propeller on, which I'm going to do that the last thing. I want to break them off. That concludes construction and painting of this kit. So all I have left to do is take the masks off the the glass here, or perspex, whatever it's called, and do a little bit of weathering. I can put the aerial on and this kit will be done. So I'm going to end this video here. And as always, thanks for joining me here on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, hints, tips, etc., put them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. So for now, that's it. Next time we come back, I will do those finishing touches, do some weathering, and it will be time for a final reveal. So thanks for joining me on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude again, and I will see you all later.